Hello, good evening. Glad you could join us. We're going to have a real good chinwag here tonight about Sheffield football, and we've ticked all the boxes. We couldn't be more unbiased. We couldn't be more balanced. We have the author of a Sheffield United book, and he's a blade that's written this. He's one of our own. Danny Hall is in the studio with me, and the writer of this, Wednesday versus United, the Sheffield derby, Richard Crooks. Now, he's an owl. So we've got it absolutely spot on to start with. The programme can only go downhill from here with accusations of bias or whatever. Danny Hall and Richard Crooks. First of all, congratulations, gentlemen, on these two very fine books, which I've devoured in a very short space of time.
Thank you.
I think they've both come out almost simultaneously. Richard, they're very different. I mean, Richard, you're historically looking at this fixture that we all love. Well, I think we all love. I'm going to ask Danny Hall about this in a moment. The Steel City Derby has become known, but really it's very personal to you because you relate it very much to your own experiences growing up as a Wednesday fan in the city. I know you don't live here now,
yes,
but it's very personal, isn't it? It's the derbies you've seen. Absolutely,
Alan. And the one game above all that I want to be at and enjoy, you know, the history, my family's history, the belonging to Wednesday, and all that I've seen over the years, from school to work to now, 45 years. First derby I went to was 65, and there are personal experiences. And I was asked, well, you really should put this in an objective, dispassionate way, the book you're writing. There's no chance, absolutely no chance. That derby, the derby, is all about passion, fervour, how you feel, you know, your belonging. Unitedites will feel exactly the same, and rightly so. That's what makes it the derby. And I bring out, I hope, you know, the highs for me, absolutely, and they really are high. But I also bring out the lows. And that really is a place you don't want to be. So Unitedites, I'm sure, can relate to, oh, that's the Wednesday high, and we weren't feeling so good about that. But the Unitedites equally will see, well, OK, that's the Wednesday lows, and I relate to that because we were really high, like at Hillsborough last September. You have to be passionate rather than dispassionate about a book like this. You've come clean, you're an owl. As you say, you couldn't really write it, you know, because you'd have no credibility if you pretended that you were from Sheffield and you were straight down the middle, because there aren't many of those, are there, Danny?
Not particularly, no.
I mean, you're right out there as a blade, and you've written a book about the blades.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the highs and the lows. There's been probably more highs for United, hasn't there, over the years. In terms of the record.
Just.
We're on the right side of it.
I'm going to leave you
get out of the way.
I'm going to leave you two to get on with it. Carry on. There's a party pooper in every room, and certainly in every studio. You like derbies, don't you, Danny?
No, absolutely not. Richard's right in everything he says about the passion and everything about that. I think for me, it possibly goes back to growing up in a very, very predominantly Wednesday area. So where we were from, there were very little Blaze fans. It kind of coincided with the time that Wednesday had the upper hand as well. So I kind of grew up as a double kind of.
So you had a hard time?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it couldn't have got any worse. Yeah. So kind of the way that I look at it now is, I don't like them, for one. I'll probably be quite happy if they never happened again.
You don't like them meaning derbies?
No, derbies.
You don't mean
no,
no.
Derbies, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Bigsy, yeah. No, derbies. I'd be quite happy if there was never another one again, because for me, the feeling is more. Even when the right side comes out on top, which has happened more often than even then, the feeling for me is more. Thank the Lord for that. Because the feeling of losing.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
The depth of despair is lower than the height of the joy can be, in your view.
In my view. Yeah. That's glass half full kind of guy, but
I think it speaks of your character. That if you grew up surrounded by Owls fans and you carried on being a blade, I don't know if you shouted about it in the street.
Oh yeah, you've got to do that. Yeah. I blame my old man for that one and all my family, but he was at the Boxing Day game.
Good man.
You know, it can never get as bad as that. Touch wood. So
Yeah, I was at the Boxing Day game entirely dispassionately, I've got to say, but it's stuck in my memory. And you grew up in perhaps what would be considered to be a Blades area, didn't you?
Very much.
In Healy.
Alan, very much Healy. And Road School. Yeah, absolutely. So 10 minutes walk from Bramall Lane. But my parents, both Wednesday nights, my dad in particular, his family from Hillsborough, going back to, well, my great-granddad on the tram cars at Home Lane in the turn of the century. And in fact, my mother and her family were Healy through and through. But they go back to the Olive Grove days. So there were people who, in Healy in the 60s, absolutely could remember the Olive Grove days. So, yeah.
What really interests me about the kind of rivalry is that there were still people not so long ago who used to go and watch both teams.
Yeah.
And that absolutely baffles me. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know, I can't imagine a situation in 2018 where that would happen. But apparently, going back to probably my dad, granddad, that was quite a common thing. It just kind of shows the shift in kind of society, I suppose, and that people now are so tribal.
They supported one, but went to watch the other and were quiet about it.
I imagine so, yeah. Whether they were supporting the other team, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
what do you think about that, Richard? Do you know anything like that?
No, I don't. But what I was going to pick up on, Alan, Danny, is what you said about society. I bring it out in I think there's 6 chapters in the book that pick on particular games. And the 1967 derby at Bramall Lane, the thing I remember about that, quite apart from the fact we lost and Bill Punton scored the winner, and that hurt. But actually we went as lads, 10-year-old lads from school, red and white scarves, blue and white scarves, walking from Healy to Bramall Lane. And actually the red and whites came with us to the Bramall Lane end.
Right.
At the beginning. Now, at 2:30, they changed their mind. They went on the Short Street Cop. But you could never nowadays
do that.
Actually see blue and white, red and white lads just walking together. The other one, if I may, in 71, the 70-71 derby in October at Bramall Lane, which again United won, I was amazed to see in the Star that evening a picture of the Wednesday players walking to the game on the moor, walking down the moor and to Bramall Lane. You wouldn't see that nowadays.
Couldn't do it.
No.
They couldn't do it. So, actually, these were more civilised days in great respect, because that's certainly my first recollection of a Sheffield derby is the fact that supporters mingled. And in fact, when I was reading your book, I thought, what an amazing coincidence, because your first derby was also my first derby. And I worked out from your description of it, we can only have been standing feet or at most yards apart on the Cop at Bramall Lane, because this was September 1965. My family had just moved north from deepest Kent, so you know that tells you straight away that I was completely unbiased. I was just watching a football match. I was, you know, me and my dad were the only probably unbiased people in the crowd that day. And that remains to this day, obviously, you know, completely neutral. And Sheffield United won 1-0 with a late goal at the Cop end, where you and I both were, unknowingly, in close proximity. Your recollection of it is what?
Just arms going up, the ball coming towards the goal, Wednesday defending that goal. And all of a sudden, Birchenall, there was a real thorn in Wednesday's side, Birchenall.
Loads of goals.
Oh, dear. 6 goals. Oh, he was an absolute hero of the Blades. Sherman, I think, they referred to. Anyway, absolutely. He came towards the goal, made contact, and that's the last I saw. But there's a great roar, arms went up. I didn't. My dad was kind of just stood next to me, and then it's not a nice place to be. So I didn't see the goal. I didn't see the ball hit the back of the net, but it did.
You didn't want to see it hit the back. I actually did, and I can tell you that he hammered it in on the volley or the half volley, one or the other. I think the ball was off the ground, and I think it was probably 6 yards out, and he hammered it into the roof of the net. It was quite a spectacle. I can see it here to this day.
That doesn't make me feel any better, but thank you.
There you are. And it did finish 1-0.
It just sounds like just sounds like a completely different world. I suppose it was a different world, but the fact that you were sat on the stood on the United Cup, and that was quite, from what I can gather, quite a common.
Yes, and indeed in the 67-68 derby at Bramall Lane, Wednesday won that one. I was stood on the Cup with my dad again, and it was common. Yeah. So a different world.
absolutely. What's your first derby memory? I know you hate them. By the way, while you're thinking about that, journalists hate them as well, impartial journalists, because you can't do right for doing wrong. You one word out of place and you get fired at by one side, and it's ridiculous. Keep off Twitter anyway. Derby week. What's your first one?
My first one, I think, was it was like a Sunday morning at a ridiculously early kick-off time. Something like 10:30 in the morning on a Sunday.
Right. Wasn't Boxing Day, was it?
No.
That was 1979.
Well, yeah, we're not celebrating Boxing Day ever since in my household. But I think it was a year that both games finished 0-0, I think, from memory. But my memory's not the best, so that might be slightly out. But that was my first.
Yeah.
There was, I think, about 2002-03 from recollection.
Yeah. But luckily there's been better ones and far worse ones since. But there's no game like it. As much as I don't like them. In the middle of it, sometimes there is moments that kind of take your breath away. People can write their name into both teams' folklore just with one. So like people like on the United side, Laurent de Jaffo. People wouldn't know anything about him unless he'd scored that goal at Hillsborough. There'd be people. Is it Lloyd Owusu who scored?
Lloyd
Owusu. First touch at Hillsborough. People that would have come and gone. Regardless if they hadn't scored that goal, and you would never remember them. Yeah, because of that touch, he goes down in Wednesday folklore, and I find that really, really interesting. That people can make themselves heroes with one touch.
Indeed, these two books are part of a continuing story, dare I say, and there's almost scope to, to continue to follow on, republish, update. I mean, Danny, with yours, it's a riveting account. I wrote a column in the Sheffield Telegraph. It's on the Star's website as well today.
Yep.
With sort of my thoughts on it. And I've got to say, I really felt for you during the summer, because this is the story of a manager turning a club around, spectacularly, and that continues to this day, and we've not reached the end of the story by any means. But during the summer, there was a possibility that the guy that you were writing, that was the focus of your story, might leave Sheffield United. What were your thoughts at that time, knowing that you've got this in the pipeline?
My exact thoughts probably not repeatable on a live broadcast. Please don't leave. Basically, was my thoughts from a professional point of view and a personal point of view, because Chris is brilliant, isn't he? Yeah. You deal with him probably as often as I do. I think he's a breath of fresh air as a manager. In terms of the way he deals with people. Really, it's not just the press. Every player that I spoke to for that had nothing but good words to say about him, which is probably fortunate for the book of its kind, but genuinely
fortunate for him as well.
Yeah, but this was also people early on that stories of people that he'd jettisoned, players that he thought were not good enough anymore or weren't possibly in the team, still want to be a part of the squad just because of how the kind of environment that he created. So these players were obviously a bit annoyed that they've been sidelined, but still want to work for him and be a part of what he created. I find that really interesting, especially in his non-league days, where players kind of leave.
So you were relieved. I think
very relieved. Yeah,
you didn't have to be a Sheffield United supporter or a first-time author to be relieved that Chris Wilder was staying.
Yeah.
And certainly, I think more chapters are in they're offering the way United are going and the way the club's going. Let's just have a look though at some images from these two excellent books. They're very, very different. But, I do recommend both of them. Now, this is a very early picture of Chris Wilder, the manager, isn't it? It's at Bradway in the Meadowhall Sunday League. He's in the middle at the bottom there. Age, 19 or 20, Danny? Something like that?
Can't be far off. That was something else that surprised me, how early as well that he started doing this. He was still very much a young player himself.
Alongside Ian Whitehorn.
Yeah, a big friend of the show.
Was on the right,
and some very 90s, 80s keeper kits as well, which was nice to see. That was one of the other surprising things. I was talking to Ian, actually, that Chris was kind of, in the early days, wasn't too keen on telling his pals that they weren't in the team, apparently, according to Ian. So he'd let Whit deal with that.
Do that.
And he'd deal with the glamorous side of it. So he let Ian do the ugly bits, which I found quite interesting. But obviously since then, he's become more adept at doing that side of things as well. And
the interest going way back to when he was a young player was quite revealing, really. Naturally cut out for the role. Just before we look at an image from your book, we were talking about the intermingling of fans that used to go on.
Yep.
In the very early days, and you briefly chronicle sort of the 1890s derbies, there was thuggery going on off the pitch and on it, wasn't
Absolutely.
there, in those days?
Absolutely.
There was genuine hatred. I mean,
Yes.
it was no more, no less, wasn't it?
Indeed, and again, you look at the research and all that's gone on. The 1900 FA Cup derby at Hillsborough was the nadir, and they really loathed each other, the players. And as you say, Alan, spectators would run on the pitch readily. The players themselves would get involved and fight. And I think that particular game I referred to, it ended up with 17 players left on the pitch. Right. That's how bad it got, and people with broken legs and everything else. It really was.
Here's an early picture of, in fact, one of the earliest known pictures of a Sheffield derby. Just a piece of paper going on the floor. Here we are. Now this is at the Olive Grove ground, dated 1897-98 season.
Yep.
That's a fantastic photograph, that, isn't it?
It's a fabulous photograph, and I'm very pleased we were able to obtain it for the book. And there's a whole heap of things you can see in there, quite apart from the players and the kit they're wearing, the ground in the background. You can see a linesman and how the linesman was kitted out as well back in those days. Really pleased to have that picture in the book.
I think that's Fred Spikesley on the right, in the back, far right, who's a great Wednesday hero. He's a real celebrity player at the time.
Yes.
So that's a real agricultural clearance going on there, isn't it?
Yes.
From that 1897-98 season. Then there was a period when it seemed to me, reading your book, that every club programme for the derby, be it the Wednesday programme or the United programme for the reverse fixture, was at pains to warmly welcome the other team and to say effectively, well, it's only a game, so let's all enjoy it. And it was always bending over backwards to be kind, weren't they?
I think that's a very good assessment of it, Alan, because with all the things that had gone on and the real loathing that was there, they absolutely did. The clubs, the official organs of the clubs were going over the top, really, and saying, great to have you here, this is the city's fixture, welcome to us, both clubs.
Yeah.
Very interesting how the clubs themselves did that. Whether the supporters were quite of the same ilk, I don't know. It
seems to me that since those days, and it's sort of settled down a bit more of a raw edge has come back into it. And we wouldn't want it there not to be a raw edge, but there's degrees. Do you feel that as well?
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. There needs to be an edge. That's what the derby's about. It's passion. It's both sides. But there are degrees and there are boundaries. And it's let's make sure we stay within the boundaries, have the edge, have the passion. That's what makes it such a fabulous game to attend, but within some boundaries.
Obviously, Danny, you know, the events of Hillsborough last season, you know, form quite a chunk of words from you in the book.
Yeah.
Sorry, Richard. Finished Sheffield Wednesday 2, Sheffield United 4. Just take it away, Danny.
Just an absolutely breathtaking, crazy day. I mean, for me, it didn't quite sink in until probably that evening, because the events of that minute, you know, where the whole game, probably the whole balance of the city turned on a minute in terms of the whole context of the game. You know, because Wednesday won that game, you know, I think that, you know, the whole balance would have turned. I think they wouldn't have had the season that they probably did. United might not have had the season they did. So you could probably attribute the whole season.
Everybody's agreeing.
To one swing of
it was a big,
Mark Duffy's boot.
It was a big boost for United, and it certainly was a body blow for Wednesday, wasn't it? You picked up on something in Danny's book about that day.
Indeed I did, and it's the only chapter of the book I've read, and it was an interesting chapter. Hillsborough heroes, unfortunately, were not blue and white that day, but you know, United won it, fair and square. But the particular thing, Danny, that I did pick out, you said after Yao's second goal, make it 2-2, and the whole ground was bouncing, apart from in the upper Leppings Lane, for obvious reasons, and singing it. And you actually say that Chris Wilder and more than one Blade admitted that's the best atmosphere they've ever been part of.
I don't think you could deny it. It was absolutely unbelievable. What made me laugh watching it back is that when Duffy gets the ball, everyone's bouncing, and he takes one step, he chops inside, and the bouncing stops a little bit, gets a little bit quieter. He goes on the outside, and you can almost hear the Wednesday fans to win, and then it hits it. And I swear to this day that the whole ground went silent what seemed
For a split second,
what seemed at the time about 5 minutes before anyone knew what had happened.
Right, we're coming to the close of part 1. There will be part 2 in 5 minutes, and James Gregg will be here then. See you in 5.